Good morning, my dear students. Today is Monday, 23rd of March 2020, Grade 12 Advanced Literature. Today we are going to study summary of Chapter 3 and 4. Objectives to summarize Chapter 3 and 4, to identify new characters and know the traits of everyone in the novel. Let's revise or let's remember some events that happened in Chapter 1 and 2. As we know, Oliver escaped from the workhouse. He decided to go to London. He followed the signs of London for 7 days. He asked for food, but many people ignored him. While he was sitting in a street, a boy came to him and offered help. The boy was called Jack Dawkins or Dodger. Jack seemed to be kind, but in real he is not kind. He took Oliver to Fagin's house. He wanted to train Oliver to steal pockets. This means, as I told you before, he wants to make him a thief. At first, Oliver didn't understand. He thought it was a game. Oliver and his two friends tried to steal something from a man whose name was Mr. Brownlow. Mr. Brownlow was a kind man, but the man shouted, "Stop thief! Stop thief!" Oliver was arrested by the police. The man went to the police station and changed his opinion when the magistrate decided to send Oliver to prison. The magistrate let Oliver to go away. Mr. Brownlow was a kind man. He took Oliver with him to his house. Oliver was ill, so he slept for many days without knowing anything. He didn't know where did he go. When he got up, he saw Mrs. Bedwin, who looked after Mr. Brown's house in front of him. When Fagin knew what happened to Oliver, he became very angry. Why? Because he was afraid of Oliver to tell the police about him. He met Mr. Sykes and told him what happened. This is a new character here. Fagin was afraid of Oliver to tell the police about what he had seen. Mr. Sykes suggested to send Nancy to the police station to know what happened to Oliver. Why Nancy? Because the police had no information about her. He gave Nancy and the Dodger some money and asked them to look for Oliver. This is some revision of chapter 1 and 2. Now let's go to chapter 3 and 4. After Oliver became well, as you know, in Mr. Brown's house, Mr. Brownlow bought him some new clothes. He asked Oliver about his life. Oliver began to tell him the story. But while they were talking, Mr. Grimwig, he was Mr. Brownlow's friend, came to visit Mr. Brownlow. While they were speaking, Mrs. Bedwin, who was Mrs. Bedwin? She is the housekeeper, asked Mr. Brownlow to pay for the books. Oliver offered to help Mr. Brownlow. He asked him to give him £5 and the books, and he decided to go to the bookshop to pay for the bookshop. Mr. Grimwig was sure that Oliver would take the money and the books and would never come back. But Mr. Brownlow was sure that Oliver would come back. While Oliver was going to the bookshop, Nancy and Mr. Sykes met him in the street. They took him by force to Fagin's house again. They took his money and the clothes. Oliver asked them not to take the money, but they refused. Oliver tried to escape, but Mr. Sykes caught him and began to beat him with a stick. Nancy asked them to leave Oliver or she would call the police. This means Nancy has a kind heart. She helped Oliver. Fagin asked Oliver not to tell anything to the police. There was an advertisement in a newspaper that asked for information about Oliver. When Mr. Brownlow read the advertisement, he became very angry. He told them he didn't want to listen to this name again. One day, Fagin asked Oliver to clean his house, but he refused. As usual, he punished him again. Mr. Fagin and Mr. Sykes planned to take Oliver to a large house in the countryside. Nancy took Oliver to Mr. Sykes' house. Mr. Sykes took Oliver to Anne. All the house belonged to a man called Toby Crackit. Oliver slept there, but Mr. Toby woke him up at 1:30 a.m. 1:30 a.m., not p.m. Oliver saw Mr. Sykes and Mr. Toby taking a gun with them. They asked Oliver to come with them. They took him by force. While they were walking, they stopped by a high brick wall. They climbed up the wall. They wanted to break out the house. Oliver asked them not to do, but they refused and threatened him by the gun. They used a small window to go inside the house. So they pushed Oliver and asked him to go upstairs and open the door for them. But Oliver was shot. Because the window was so small, they couldn't go inside. So they pushed Oliver to go through the window. This is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much. Goodbye.